Hey there. So, my next guest is a teacher teaching game development and design. And the really cool part is he became a teacher almost immediately after getting out of school. So, school has been his life so far, and it hasn't stopped his passion and his enthusiasm for it. I've met a lot of people in the teaching field who they do it not necessarily their true love, and it's pretty clear this guy loves what he does. He loves helping people kind of find their way into this field. So this is going to be one I know you're absolutely going to enjoy. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today I have a very special guest with us. I have Mars Ashton. Hey there, Mars. How's it going?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. Hi.
Absolutely. Where do you hail from, Mars?
Just out of Detroit. I currently live in Oxford, Michigan.
Oh, it's nice and cold right now.
Yes, very cold. Dug myself out of the snow to be able to make it to work today. So,
well, that's every day for you up there, though. All right.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. It doesn't snow this bad as often, at least in the part of Michigan I'm at. So,
oh well, so you're lucky. When I was out in Ohio, it was always snowy all winter long. All you just do from one day to spring, right? All right. Yeah. So Mars, I like getting the show started right into it. So why don't you begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Mars. I've been teaching since 2007, purely within the game development space academically. I've also been doing a lot of independent game development on the side. Being able to teach has given me summers off, and I only teach a couple of days out of the week, so I've kind of filled in that time with trying to make money off of the games that I make. Eventually, I started to do a lot of community development. I'm the director of the International Game Developers Association chapter at Detroit. And that's kind of connected me with a number of people. I do some technical writing on the side, namely for the Intel Developer Zone. So a lot of guidebooks and stuff. And I also do quality assurance testing with a company based out of Grand Rapids called Finji. So.
All right. Well, you got a lot going on. That's a lot for us to talk about. Before we do that, though, I start every interview with a single question. So I'm going to ask you just like I ask everybody else. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Mars?
I think it depends on who you ask. If you ask my wife, she would probably be like, oh, he's a 10 for sure. But, if you were to ask maybe, one of my students or somebody that I work with, they'd be like, no, he's more like a 3. Like, he's not that weird,
Like Superman, you're mild-mannered most of the time. But then...
Yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah, I've been called, people meet me and they're like, you don't even look like you're a gamer, let alone somebody who makes games, and in the summer I go blonde and, I get kind of tan and they're like, you're more of like a surfer dude than, a game developer. So
we come in all shapes and sizes, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Yep. Speaking of which, this is the Gamerpreneur podcast, so I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games, Mars?
Oh, way back in the day. I got a Nintendo from my grandfather. So I grew up on consoles until I was able to afford a hand-me-down PC from a local library, and then I've been primarily, gaming on PCs ever since. Okay. Even if it was at a lowly like 15 frames per second, whatever I could do to play whatever was out.
Yeah, there was a time when I played World of Warcraft. 15 frames per second would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. What do you play today now, if anything?
I tend to stray away from a lot of the AAA stuff. Usually I pick up, some MMO or whatever. I got into Final Fantasy 14 when the pandemic hit, and I've been playing that almost every day. If I'm not playing that, then I'm probably playing Warframe. These like big online persistent worlds I'm all about, something that I can devote a lot of time to and have a lot to show for it. I love that.
Beautiful. All right. And you've been playing pretty much as long as I have. If you had to pick one game as your all-time favorite, which one is it?
Chrono Trigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that one. That's mine. Although it depends on the day. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars might be a close, right there.
That's
But
pretty good. But I mean, Chrono Trigger it's a game about time, but it's timeless, right?
absolutely.
Uh,
I love it.
yeah.
All right. So Mars, let's get over to the preneur part because I really want to talk about like the business side of things and the fact that you do teaching and you do developing and so much more. But why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your professional background? How did you end up doing what you're doing today?
Um, People taking chances on somebody that wasn't qualified to teach. So, I went to school for a 2-year game production degree. And this was after, I mean, I had dropped out of high school and was trying to, kind of get like a head start on getting into college. And I was very gung ho, made a lot of poor choices as far as like student loans are concerned and stuff. But, a month after getting that, game production BFA, I ended up having a conversation over the phone with somebody who was like, let's get you in teaching next week. And, before I knew it, I was, okay, cool. I'm getting paid doing something related to games. I was teaching 2 classes the following term and 3, and before you know it, 5 or 7, right? And I was like kind of leading this digital entertainment and game design program.
Okay, wonderful. And that led you to be bored because apparently like you got so much else going on. Like how did that happen?
Well, I mean, I'm teaching, and it definitely was enough to pay all of the bills. I ended up teaching at a couple of different colleges, eventually finding full-time work and the like. But I still found that I had a lot of extra free time, and what am I going to do? I need to make money. I can get a second job. What that ended up becoming was then I was working like 3 or 4 jobs at a time, but it was all in like kind of a small capacity. I started building games on my own, kind of like fully, all of it was coming out of my pocket as far as anything I was doing with marketing or going to events. And then the expertise that I kind of built up as I built games and was teaching games, I ended up becoming a kind of a resource on the writing side and a resource on the testing and consulting side of things, right?
Okay. Now it sounds like teaching is your first love here. So what is that like teaching something that you love? Most teachers don't have any experience in the real world doing that thing. They get a degree and then maybe they go right back into teaching. But your passion is games and you've been living it your whole life. How is it different for you?
I mean, it doesn't feel like work. It never really has. I mean, I've always equated to how, the work that my students will do, I'm doing the same kind of stuff. We're all just trying to tackle these like weird problems, and we want to create these certain kind of experiences, and not one of them is really alike. Now, some of the stuff that I've picked up over the years and have been able to figure out, I can totally hand that knowledge and information down, right? But it truly feels like, if I'm teaching a class and it's just about making games, we're all just kind of sitting down and just trying to, it's like I'm just in a team with them, which is a great feeling.
Okay, so then how is it different being the teacher, the one at the front of the class, as opposed to being kind of in a collaborative environment? Because it sounds like that's kind of how you operate your classes there.
I mean, I act as a mentor for sure, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm a peer, because that's definitely not the image that I would want to give to the students. There needs to be some kind of understood hierarchy there, but I'm there as a resource. I'm there to kind of help them collaborate, and to help them learn from the mistakes that I've made, or the successes that I've had, as a collaborator. So.
Okay, what makes you good at this? Because not everybody ends up teaching, right?
Yeah, which is kind of weird, because I feel like most people, they go out into the industry and then they get into academics. But I kind of had the opposite, where I was teaching right off the bat, because I had this bit of like a knack for the critique. If we were sitting down and talking about a project, I was productive in the way that I was talking about it. So there was something that I had seen that, maybe was a little bit wise beyond the experience that I had. So I had to do some catching up, really.
Okay, fantastic. Now, Mars, part of the purpose of my show is I'm hoping someone somewhere in my audience is watching this going, wow, I didn't know I could be a teacher. Like, that sounds really cool. For that person, what do they have to do in order to get into this field?
When I started, like I said, I had some people who took a chance on me, despite me technically not qualifying for the job. And when I say that, I mean a certain degree, right? When I went to school, the big thing about anything that was graduate level, somebody going and getting a master's, somebody getting a PhD, is because they were going to teach something related to the industry. They were getting into game studies, they were getting into game design, development, they were getting into something on the academic level. I would say that that's a must now, because a lot of the universities that are worthwhile to teach at, that are going to be able to provide the support that you would need, they're going to meet those requirements. But, after having taught for so long and, being on the last year of a 6-year tenure track process now, I would advise have a research agenda, have a list of service roles that you've taken. I run IGTA Detroit, so that's huge, right? But I'm also a part of committees, and I'm also, writing grants and working on all these different projects, really just related to the facilitation of things. But the research thing is huge. And I feel like it's not necessarily an obvious thing when it comes to the industry and maybe certain expectations about, what it could be like academically for somebody.
Okay, let's talk about your role with IGDA for a second. How is it organizing an organization like that? Organizing an organization.
Yeah, so it's interesting because they're actually pretty hands off. Back in the day, there were a lot more, I guess, restrictions and kind of limitations or requirements as far as how, if you're running a chapter, you have to have X amount of people and the like, right? My experience from my perspective, I was able to kind of, move into the position and kind of start running the chapter. And I've only been given support. They want to elevate any event that I've done. They want to share it on the social media, right? Headquarters, IGDA headquarters. They just want to, continue to promote and support in any way they can. And I know, through them too, there's been a number of opportunities related to special interest groups, through diversity and so many others, that I've been able to share with students. Whether or not they took advantage of that, I don't know. But yeah.
Okay. Now you've been teaching, it sounds like, pretty much since you got done with school yourself. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced as opposed to, some of your colleagues?
I mean, what's I think unique to a lot of my experiences is that I have been, a facilitator through and through. So I have made a lot of recommendations, as far as, hey, Mars, we're looking for somebody, who could teach this, who could work this job, who could do this thing. And, you don't always have, 2020, you always have crystal clear, kind of future sight when it comes to like how things could potentially roll out. So I think one of the difficulties is that, I found myself in positions where I've really had to trust that, people that I recommend or try to hire can do that job. And that's not always the case. So I've been in a position where I've been able to kind of learn and maybe anticipate some of these things a little bit better.
Okay, wonderful. Now, how long have you been teaching?
Oh, geez, since 2007. So 14, 15 years, right?
So 14, 15 years. If you could go back in time and you could walk up to little Mars back then, young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to conquer the world, I'm sure. And you could tell him everything that was going to happen over the next 14, 15 years of his life, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, everything. But there was one piece of advice you needed to give him in order to make everything bigger, brighter, more profitable, happier, whatever. What would you tell him?
Enjoy the ride. because when things get down, and there are dips and things don't seem like they're impossible, and it'll be fine. And the fact that, I've been able to be in this industry in any capacity for this long, I think is ridiculously lucky, So yeah, if I'm little Mars and just looking at like, wow, big Mars has done all of these things, like it's been a ride. It's been a lot of fun. Just enjoy it. I could be working a completely different industry that would not be as fun as it has been. So
certainly. Okay. Speaking of dips, let's talk a little more personally. Okay. I believe that
sure.
we learn the most in our life from our failures, not necessarily our successes. Because when you succeed, you may not know what happened. You just kind of like, I did it, right? But when you fail, you have to take a look at it. You got to be able to move past it and move forward in order to succeed the next time or time thereafter, and however many times it takes to succeed in the future. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
I feel like I've failed at almost everything that I've tried to do at least once, which is a vague answer. But I think without that kind of perspective, I'm not learning unless I'm making mistakes, So if I'm working with students and they're working on a new project, like more than likely my recommendations and my feedback and my, what I'm, hoping that they get out of it based on the conversations they have with me is, don't do what I did that one time. I've since learned from that and have been able to, persevere and succeed. But let me try to help you avoid some of that stuff, right? And it could just be, how to market something. It could be just, don't try to make a game like that or, in that way, right? So it's a very general answer, but I kind of hope that I've failed at like everything, to some degree. Otherwise, I don't know. What have I been doing?
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Speaking of students, someone out there is learning this subject, right? There's plenty of people on this track. What are like the top 3 pieces of advice for you have for students in order to go out into the workforce and get the dream jobs?
Number one would be like 90% of it is just who you know. A lot of it has nothing to do with what you can do, because a lot of it you're just going to learn no matter what, no matter where, regardless of the discipline or focus. A lot of it's going to be that trial and error, but, knowing the right people is really the way that I've found most of the opportunities that I've had. I think the second thing, you've already touched on a little bit, and that's just failing is paramount. It's necessary. You have to. If you're not making mistakes, if you're not, hitting walls and running into these impossible situations, like, what are you going to do? And hopefully that doesn't happen too much or in a way that's too risky, but, it's absolutely necessary and it's okay. And the third thing is that it's okay to redo things. And this, again, is very general. It's a very universal thing, but it could be, a paragraph that you write about yourself. You always have to update that because you're always going to be changing and shifting in what you can provide, any situation, employer, environment, whatever. And the same can be said for any work you do, whether it's business related or development related, design related.
Okay. Speaking of the future, what is the future of game development and game design over the next 5 years?
A lot of people talk about VR and AR. I'm not on that bandwagon. I feel like, since the 60s, we've kind of gradually been working with it. We've seen some spikes here and there as far as the accessibility, of consumers, of developers to be able to work with it. I would be lying, though, if I said that the majority of our students, don't work in that space. But I think, the industry is in a state and has been for a long time where, because anybody and everybody can jump into games now and be making games, free tools are everywhere. That a lot of companies, a lot of businesses are going to continue making games that are faster to make, that are bite-sized, so it's not going to be one big game. It's going to be a whole catalog of little games that are, not $60, but components of something bigger.
Okay. And again, more personally, what is something that you are working to improve on in yourself today?
Um, I would say mindfulness. I mean, I have so many different roles, the balancing this in addition to having two kids and, having a partner at home who works from home, especially during a pandemic is, it's a lot to balance. So making sure that I'm able to schedule things effectively, that I'm not overloading myself, that I'm, able to reserve time to, play Chrono Trigger once a year or two, jump into Final Fantasy 14 and, splurge on my time for a few hours, this night or that night. Like, and really just having a good perspective on things, has been a bit. And in addition to that, I feel like one of my biggest challenges is really just, working through, really the ability to kind of navigate all of these opportunities that I'm presented. Because, once you end up in the industry, you get the ball rolling. I feel like you keep plowing through pins, and they just don't stop. So it becomes very easy to keep saying yes, and not learning soon enough to, say no.
Absolutely. All right. How often do you get mistaken for a student? I got to know.
All the time. It doesn't happen as much as it used to, because I started, teaching, and I was barely, 21, 22. So all the time I would be the first one in a room, and, everybody else would enter, and they would be like, is the teacher going to come by? And then I would stand up and I would start class, and, it was one of those good, like, movie moments. I've been blessed with good genes as far as looking young for now. So I'll take what I can get.
I love it. All right, Mars, this has been a fantastic interview. How do people find you? Where are you on social media, contact information, all that, please?
Probably the easiest way is to just Google Mars Ashton. I will pop up in a number of ways, and that's, LinkedIn. It's on Twitter. My handle is Nuja Kujata, which is difficult to, relay, but NUJAKUJATA. It's actually it's a combination of one of my favorite musicians who's no longer with us, Nujabes. And then Kujata, which is a mythological bull. I'm a Taurus. So.
All right. I love it. All right. As we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
No. I just want to say thank you. It's been an honor. Anytime I'm invited to have a conversation like this, it means the world to me. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Mars, thank you very much. I genuinely do appreciate you coming on with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Of course.
All right. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.